Galactic Council chamber floated in the void of space, a massive station where hundreds of alien species gathered to decide the fate of worlds. Inside the Great Hall, representatives from across the galaxy sat in their designated seats, arranged by power and influence. The Valtrine Empire occupied the highest tier, their towering forms draped in ceremonial armor. Below them sat the Catherine Combine, wealthy traders who controlled most of the galaxy's commerce. Humanity had a seat too, but it was small and tucked away in a corner where the younger species gathered. Ambassador Soman stood at her station, reviewing reports on her datapad. She had been Earth's voice in the Council for 3 years now, and she understood how things worked here. Power mattered. Resources mattered. If your species had nothing valuable to offer, the Council simply ignored you. It was efficient, they said. Practical. The galaxy was too large to save everyone. Far from the Council chambers on the edge of explored space, Captain Deho guided his ship through an asteroid field. The Wandering Star was an exploration vessel, designed to survey uncharted systems and catalog new worlds. His crew was small but skilled. Minji handled navigation with calm precision, never missing a calculation. Hyunwoo kept the engines running no matter what problems arose. Ji-won studied any form of life they encountered, her eyes always bright with curiosity. They were mapping the Outer Rim, a region most species considered worthless. No valuable minerals, no strategic importance, just dying stars and forgotten worlds. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Minji said, her fingers moving across her console. "It's a distress signal, very faint. Old protocol may be 50 years outdated." Deho leaned forward in his chair. "Can you trace it?" "Already done. It's coming from a moon orbiting that red giant." She pointed to the main view screen where a massive dying star dominated the view. One small moon circled it, barely visible against the star's angry light. "That's not on our mission plan," Hyunwoo noted from his engineering station. Deho considered for a moment. They had schedules to keep, reports to file. But someone had been calling for help for 50 years and no one had answered. "Change course. Let's see who's down there." The Wandering Star descended through the moon's thin atmosphere. The surface was beautiful in a fragile way. Purple vegetation covered rolling hills. Crystal formations grew from the ground like frozen waterfalls. And everywhere small lights moved through the landscape. "Life signs confirmed," Ji-won said, her voice filled with wonder. "Thousands of them. They're bipedal, maybe 1 meter tall. Captain, I'm reading bioluminescence. They glow." The ship landed near what appeared to be a settlement. Simple structures made from the same crystal that grew naturally on the moon. As the crew stepped out, they saw them for the first time. The Ilari. They were small beings with smooth skin that shimmered with soft light, colors shifting from blue to green to purple. Large eyes watched the humans with curiosity and hope. They moved gracefully, and despite their fragile appearance, they showed no fear. An elder approached, his light dimmer than the others. Speaking in a melodic language the translation devices struggled to interpret, Ji-won adjusted her equipment and slowly the words became clear. "You came," the elder said simply. "We called and you came. I am Lurim. I'm Captain Deho. We received your distress signal. How long have you been transmitting?" "Many cycles. Many cycles," Lurim's light flickered sadly. "Others came before you. They looked at our world. They took measurements. Then they left. No one helped." Ji-won was already scanning the system with her portable equipment. Her expression grew concerned. "Captain, that star is unstable. It's going to expand. When it does, this moon will be consumed," Deho finished. "How long?" 2 years. "Maybe less." Lurim nodded slowly. "We know. We have always known. We asked the Great Council for help. We sent messages to every species with ships. We have no technology like yours. We cannot leave on our own. We can only ask." "And no one answered," Minji said quietly. "They said we had nothing to trade, nothing valuable. Our world has no metals they want. We have no weapons. We are too small to be warriors, too simple to be scholars. They looked at us and saw nothing useful, so they marked our world as non-viable and left us to die." Deho felt anger rising in his chest. He had heard the Council's debates about resource allocation. He understood the arguments about efficiency and strategic value. But standing here looking at these gentle beings who only wanted to live, all those logical arguments felt hollow. "How many of you are there?" he asked. 40,000, Lurim replied. We are all that remain of a species that once numbered in the millions. Disease and famine took the others as our world began to die. Hyunwoo was doing calculations on his datapad. We could fit maybe 300 on our ship. We'd need dozens of vessels to evacuate everyone, and we'd need somewhere to take them. Daeho looked at his crew. Minji met his eyes and nodded. Hyunwoo shrugged with a slight smile. Jiwon was already compiling data about the Alari culture, determined to preserve everything. Lurim, Daeho said firmly, we're going to help you. I don't know how yet, but we will. That's a promise. The elder's light brightened, colors swirling with emotion. Why? What do we have that you could want? Nothing, Daeho replied honestly. You don't have to give us anything. We help because it's right. We don't leave people behind. Within hours, Daeho sent a priority message to Ambassador Soman at the Galactic Council. The message was simple but urgent. An intelligent species was facing extinction, and they needed immediate evacuation assistance. Soman brought the matter before the council at the next session. She stood in the Great Hall and explained the situation. She showed images of the Alari, of their dying world, of the beauty they would lose if they disappeared from the galaxy. High Commander Threx of the Valtrine Empire listened, his massive form unmoved. When Soman finished, he spoke in a voice that echoed through the chamber. This is unfortunate, but not unusual. Species die every day across the galaxy. We cannot save them all. The Alari offer no strategic value. They possess no technology worth preserving. They control no resources we require. Evacuation would cost billions and set a dangerous precedent. Every dying species would then expect our help. We must be practical. Other council members agreed. Resources were finite. Choices had to be made. The galaxy was harsh, and sentiment was a luxury that powerful civilizations could not afford. The vote was called. 847 species voted against intervention. Only 3 voted in favor: humanity and 2 small species that remembered when they too had needed help. Soman stood alone in the council chamber after the session ended. She sent the results to Daeho, her heart heavy with the message she had to deliver. On Vela, Daeho read the council's decision. His crew gathered around him waiting for his response. The Alari watched from a distance, their lights dimming as they sensed the bad news. Daeho closed his datapad and looked up at his crew. The council said no. They won't help. He paused, then smiled grimly. So we'll do it ourselves. Contact Earth Command. Contact the colonies. Tell them we need ships, supplies, and volunteers. Tell them there are 40,000 people who need our help. Tell them humanity doesn't abandon those who need us. Minji began sending messages immediately. Hyunwoo started planning the logistics. Jiwon continued documenting everything about the Alari culture. And on the surface of Vela, Lurim watched the humans work with growing hope. Perhaps, he thought, not all advanced civilizations forgot what it meant to care. The message spread across human space like wildfire. Within 3 days of Daeho's call for help, the response began. It started small at first. A cargo ship captain from Mars changed course, offering his vessel for transport. Then a colony ship from New Haven volunteered. Then 3 more ships from the belt stations. Then dozens more. Ambassador Soman watched the reports flood in from her office on the council station. She had expected some response from Earth Command, perhaps a few military vessels assigned to the mission. What she got instead surprised even her. This was not an official government operation. This was humanity itself, choosing to act. Private citizens pooled their credits to fund the mission. Engineers volunteered their time. Doctors prepared medical supplies for a species they had never met. Ordinary people across dozens of human worlds looked at the images of the Alari and made a simple choice. These people needed help, and help would be given. The council noticed. High Commander Threx summoned Salmon to a private meeting in one of the station's diplomatic chambers. The massive Valtrine commander stood near a viewport, watching human ships gather in nearby space. Ambassador, your government is violating council protocols, Threx said, without turning. The matter of the Alari was voted upon and decided. Humanity's actions undermine the council's authority. Soman stood her ground. The council chose not to act. We simply made a different choice. You waste resources on beings that offer nothing in return. This is inefficient, illogical. Threx finally turned to face her. What do you gain from this? We gain nothing, Soman replied. That's not why we do it. Then you are fools. Threk stepped closer, his form towering over the human ambassador. Or you are playing a game we do not yet understand. Perhaps you seek to gain the Alari's loyalty. Perhaps you wish to establish a colony on their moon before it is destroyed. Tell me the true reason. The true reason is that they asked for help and no one should die alone in the dark when we have the ability to prevent it. That's all. Threk stared at her for a long moment. Your species is strange, Ambassador. This sentimentality will be your weakness. Remember that. On Vela, the rescue operation began in earnest. Captain Deho coordinated the growing fleet of human vessels. Ships arrived every few hours now, coming from every corner of human space. Military transport sent by Earth Command. Colony ships from frontier worlds. Even luxury liners whose owners had converted their passenger spaces into temporary housing. Hyunwoo took charge of the technical challenges. Evacuating 40,000 beings from a dying world was not simple. They needed life support systems adjusted for Alari biology. They needed to carefully pack the crystal structures that held the Alari's historical records. They needed to preserve seeds and samples of Vela's unique plant life. We're not just moving people, Hyunwoo explained to his engineering teams. We're moving an entire civilization. Everything they are, everything they were, comes with us. We leave nothing behind that can be saved. Jiwon worked with the Alari scholars documenting their culture. She learned that the Alari were artists and gardeners. They had no written language, but they stored information in the patterns of light they created. Their entire history was recorded in crystal formations that glowed with specific sequences. Every crystal told a story, and Jiwon made sure every single one was carefully packed for transport. Minji managed the complex logistics of moving thousands of people onto ships designed for other purposes. She created schedules, assigned families to appropriate vessels, and made sure no one was left behind. She worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination. The Alari themselves were overwhelmed by the human effort. They had never seen such organized compassion. Lurim walked among the human workers, watching them sweat and strain to save a people they had just met. Why do you work so hard for us? He asked a young human engineer who was installing environmental controls in a cargo bay. The engineer, a woman named Boram from the Mars colonies, wiped sweat from her forehead. Because you need help. That's enough reason. But you gain nothing, Boram smiled. I gain the knowledge that I did something good today. That's worth more than credits. Weeks turned into months. The rescue fleet grew to over 200 ships. The operation became the largest humanitarian effort in human history. News networks broadcast the evacuation, and humans across known space watched as their species chose compassion over calculation. Other alien species watched too, with confusion and growing interest. In the Kethrin Combine's commercial centers, traders discussed the strange human behavior. They ran economic models trying to understand what humanity hoped to gain. Every model came back negative. Humans were spending billions of credits and receiving nothing of monetary value in return. They must be hiding something, insisted Vexos, a mid-level Kethrin diplomat. No species acts against their own interests without reason. There must be strategic value we are missing. But try as they might, no one could identify what that value might be. The Alari truly had nothing to trade. Vela truly had no resources worth claiming. The humans were simply helping because they chose to help. This confused the galaxy more than any military action could have. In the council chambers, smaller species began to whisper among themselves. For thousands of years they had accepted the hierarchy. The strong protected themselves. The wealthy traded among themselves. The weak were ignored. That was simply how the galaxy worked. But humanity was showing a different way. A species did not need to be strong or wealthy or useful to deserve protection. They just needed to be alive and in danger. One representative, from a small aquatic species called the Yeni, approached Soman in a quiet corridor after a council session. Ambassador, the Yeni said through his translation device, my people's world is being poisoned by mining operations. We asked the council for help many times. They said the mining rights were legally purchased and we should relocate. But we have nowhere to go and no ships to take us. Would humanity help a species like us too? Soman looked at the Yeni representative. His large eyes held desperate hope. She thought about the resources humanity was already spending on the Alari. She thought about the political complications of intervening in another council matter. She thought about all the logical reasons to say no, Then she thought about what Deho would say. "Send us the details of your situation," Soman replied. "We'll see what we can do." The Yeni's translator could not convey his gratitude adequately, but the way his entire body seemed to brighten said enough. On Vela, the evacuation entered its final phase. The sun was growing more unstable, and Jiwan's calculations showed they had perhaps 4 months remaining. Most of the Alari were already aboard human ships, living in temporary accommodations while humanity figured out where they would go. Governor Taeyang of the colony world New Haven sent a message to Deho. "We have space. We have resources. Send them here. We'll make room." New Haven was a peaceful agricultural world established by humans only 30 years earlier. It was still developing, still growing. Taking in 40,000 refugees would strain their resources significantly. But Taeyang had been one of the first to volunteer his world when the call went out. "Our grandparents were refugees once," he said in his public announcement. "Someone gave them a chance. We'll do the same." The last group of Alari boarded the final transport ship 16 months after the operation began. Lurum was among them, carrying the oldest and most precious crystal of their species. It contained the story of their origins, the memory of their homeworld before the dying star had begun to kill it. Deho stood with Lurum on the transport's observation deck as they lifted off. Below them, Vela's surface was already beginning to crack from the heat. In another month it would be consumed entirely. "You saved us," Lurum said simply. "We will never forget this." "We did what anyone should do," Deho replied, "but no one else did. Only humans. Why are your people different?" Deho thought about that question. He thought about human history, about all the times humans had failed to help each other, about all the cruelty and selfishness in their past. But he also thought about all the times humans had reached out, had sacrificed, had chosen to be better than their worst impulses. "Maybe we're not different," he said finally. "Maybe we just remember what it's like to need help, and we decided we never want anyone to feel abandoned the way we once felt." The transport jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving Vela behind forever. Ahead lay New Haven and a new beginning. Behind them, the galaxy watched and wondered what humanity would do next. Some, like High Commander Threx, saw weakness. Others, like the desperate Yeni and countless other overlooked species, saw hope. The human anomaly had begun, and the galaxy would never be quite the same. The crisis began with a simple announcement. The Kithrin Combine declared their intention to begin full-scale mining operations in the Marathi asteroid fields. The Marathi, those small beings who lived in the floating rocks, had 60 days to vacate. The Combine had purchased legal mining rights through the Galactic Council, and no amount of protest would change that. Admiral Deho read the announcement from his office on New Haven. The Marathi had only been partially evacuated. There were still 20,000 of them living in the asteroids, building homes in the rocks where they had lived for generations. They had nowhere else to go. He contacted Ambassador Soman immediately.
"Can the Council stop this?"
"I've tried," Somin replied, her face tight with frustration on the video screen. The Combine's purchase was legal by Council law. The Marathi are classified as non-sentient because they don't use verbal language. Legally, we're arguing about rocks, not people. That's insane. We've met them. They're intelligent. They have culture, families, art. The Council doesn't care. Threx blocked every proposal I made. He knows this will force our hand." Deho understood. This was not really about mining rights. This was about testing humanity. If humans backed down, their promise to protect others was meaningless. If humans intervened, they would be breaking Council law and giving Threx justification for military action. He made his decision quickly. "Send ships. We're evacuating the Marathi before the Combine arrives. Deho, if we do this, the Combine might use force. Then we'll be there to stop them. We don't abandon people because it's inconvenient or dangerous. That was never the deal." Within days, human ships began arriving at the Marathi asteroid fields. They were not warships, not primarily. They were transports, colony vessels, and rescue ships. But they were there, and they were not leaving without the Marathi. The Kithrin Combine responded by sending their own fleet. 20 warships, heavily armed, designed to enforce their mining claims. Their commander was Vexos, who had been promoted after his earlier recommendations about humanity. He was under strict orders: remove the humans by any means necessary. Admiral Daeho commanded the human response fleet from his flagship. Beside him on the bridge, Minji managed tactical systems while Hyunwoo kept the ship's engines operating at peak efficiency, despite the extended deployment. They faced a Kethran battle group 3 times their size. The 2 fleets met in the asteroid field where the Marathi lived. For 3 days they held position, neither side willing to fire first but neither willing to back down. Human ships continued evacuating Marathi families, while Kethran warships watched and waited for orders. Vexos opened a communication channel to Daeho's flagship. The Kethran commander appeared on screen, his angular features showing a mix of respect and regret. "Admiral Daeho, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. You know I cannot let you continue these evacuations. The Combine has legal claim to these asteroids." "Legal doesn't mean right," Daeho replied calmly. "These are people's homes. Would you destroy your own home for profit? My personal feelings are irrelevant. I have orders. Withdraw your ships or I will remove them by force. I can't do that. We won't leave these people behind. If you want to mine these asteroids, you'll have to go through us." The standoff continued for another day. Behind the lines, human evacuation ships worked frantically to move as many Marathi as possible. Each hour gained meant hundreds more lives saved. Then High Commander Threx himself arrived with additional Valtrine warships. The message was clear. The Council's most powerful military force was ready to enforce their decision. Threx broadcast on all channels, his voice booming across the system.
"Humanity has violated Council law.
You have interfered with legal commerce. You have defied Council authority. I offer one final chance. Withdraw now, or face the consequences." On New Haven, Governor Taeyang watched the standoff with growing dread. He sent an urgent message to all human colonies and Earth itself. They need support. Anyone who can help, go now. The response surprised even Taeyang. Ships began arriving from across human space, not just military vessels, but civilian ships willing to stand between the Marathi and the Council's forces. But more surprising were the other ships that arrived. Ilari fighters appeared, small craft piloted by refugees humanity had saved. They were not powerful, but they were there. Then came ships from a dozen other species that humanity had helped. The Yeni, the Soral, the Quen, and others. Each brought whatever vessels they had, each ready to stand with humanity. "This is foolish," Threx declared when he saw the ragtag fleet assembling. "You protect weakness with weakness. We will sweep you aside like debris." But before he could give the order to attack, something unexpected happened. Several mid-level Council species sent messages announcing their fleets would remain neutral. Some even quietly sent intelligence to the humans, warning them of Threx's battle plans. The Kethran Combine, calculating costs versus benefits, suddenly withdrew from the coalition. Vexos received new orders from his government. The mining operation was no longer worth a potential war. "Admiral Daeho," Vexos said in a final private communication, "my government has reconsidered. The asteroids are yours. I hope we meet again under better circumstances." It was not friendship, but it was acknowledgement. Humanity had stood their ground, and the Combine had chosen profit over principle, deciding that good relations with humanity might be worth more than mining rights. High Commander Threx found himself increasingly isolated. His fleet still outnumbered the human coalition, but the political situation had changed. Starting a war now would divide the Council, rather than unite it against humanity. In a final confrontation, Threx contacted Daeho directly. "You think you've won, human, but all you've done is delay the inevitable. The strong rule. The weak perish. That is the natural order, and you cannot change it with sentiment." "Maybe," Daeho replied, "but we're going to try anyway. Every time. Every species. We'll keep trying because that's what makes us human." Threx cut the connection and his fleet withdrew. The crisis was over, at least for now. The Marathi evacuation continued without further interference. 20,000 beings found new homes among humanity's colonies and on worlds belonging to their new allies. They brought their unique skills in asteroid mining and zero-gravity engineering, techniques more efficient than anything the Kethran Combine had developed. On the flagship's bridge, Minji looked at Daeho with exhausted relief. "We actually did it. We stood up to the Council and survived. We did more than survive," Hyunwoo added. "We proved something important." Daeho nodded, but he felt no triumph. He knew this was just the beginning. Threx would not forgive this humiliation. The Council's power structure had been challenged, and powerful entities do not accept challenges gracefully. Back at the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Soman watched the political aftermath unfold. The smaller species were no longer completely silent. They had seen humanity face down the Council's military might and survive. Some began proposing new regulations protecting endangered species. Others demanded reviews of resource allocation policies. The Council was changing, slowly and painfully, but changing nonetheless. One representative, an elder from a species humanity had never even helped, approached Soman after a session. "What you are doing is dangerous, Ambassador. You make enemies of the powerful." "I know," Soman replied, "but you also give hope to the powerless. That may be more valuable than any alliance with the strong. My people are watching. Many peoples are watching. If humanity continues this path, you will not walk it alone." It was not a promise of military support, but it was something: recognition, respect. The knowledge that humanity's stand had meaning beyond just saving a few species. As Soman returned to her quarters, she allowed herself a moment of hope. The galaxy was vast and old and set in its ways, but perhaps, just perhaps, a young species with more compassion than sense could help it remember what civilization was supposed to mean. The real test, she knew, was still to come. Threx would not give up. The powerful never willingly surrendered power, but humanity had proven they could stand firm when it mattered. Whatever came next, they would face it together with those they had chosen to protect. New Haven's sky was filled with ships on the day the Alari arrived. Governor Taiyang stood at the main landing field with thousands of human colonists who had come to welcome their new neighbors. Children held signs they had painted, displaying messages of friendship in both human languages and approximations of Alari light patterns. The first transport touched down gently. Its doors opened and Lurum emerged into the sunlight of an alien world that would now be home. He stopped at the top of the ramp, his bioluminescence shifting through every color his body could produce as emotion overwhelmed him. Behind him, thousands of Alari waited nervously. Taiyang walked forward and bowed respectfully. "Welcome to New Haven. We've prepared land for your settlements. Whatever you need, we'll help you build it. This is your home now, for as long as you want it to be." Tears would have fallen from Lurum's eyes if his species had been capable of crying. Instead, his light pulsed with patterns that Jiwan's translator identified as profound gratitude, mixed with disbelief that such kindness existed. Over the following weeks, humans and Alari worked together to build a new community. The Alari were not helpless despite what the Galactic Council had assumed. They were skilled at working with living things, understanding plant growth in ways that amazed New Haven's farmers. They could sense environmental changes that human instruments missed. Their artistic crystal work became valuable both as beauty and as a new form of data storage that human engineers found fascinating. But humanity had not helped them expecting usefulness. They had helped because it was right. The fact that the Alari contributed to their new home was a bonus, not a requirement. News of the successful evacuation spread across the galaxy. Ambassador Soman began receiving messages. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Every message was the same: "We need help." The Marathi, small beings who lived in asteroid colonies, sent desperate messages. Mining corporations owned by the Kethran Combine had claimed their homes. They were being evicted with nowhere to go. The Yeni sent detailed reports of the pollution killing their oceans. A species called the Sorrel, blind cave dwellers whose world was scheduled for terraforming, begged someone to hear them. The Quen, plant-like beings too slow-moving to flee natural disasters, asked if humanity could help them relocate before their continent was destroyed by volcanic activity. Soman sat in her office surrounded by these pleas for help. She felt overwhelmed. Humanity had barely managed to evacuate the Alari. How could they help all these others? She brought the matter to Earth Command, to the colonial governors, to the human representatives, who now met regularly to coordinate their species' response to the galaxy. "We can't save everyone," said one admiral from Earth. "We don't have infinite resources." "But we can save some," argued Governor Taiyang via video link. "We saved the Alari. We can save others." "Where do we draw the line?" asked another governor. "How do we choose who lives and who dies?" The debate raged for weeks. Meanwhile, the messages kept coming. Species that had been ignored by the galaxy for generations now saw humanity as their only hope. The weight of that hope was crushing. Captain Deho, now promoted to admiral for his role in the Ilari evacuation, spoke at one of these meetings. His voice was tired but determined. We can't save everyone by ourselves, but we can do something the Council never tried. We can ask others to help us help them. The Ilari are safe. They're contributing to New Haven. Show the galaxy that these useless species have value. Maybe others will start to see what we see. It was a small hope, but it was something. Humanity began coordinating smaller rescue operations. They evacuated a few thousand Marathi from asteroid zones scheduled for mining. They sent environmental teams to help the Yeni clean their oceans. They provided transport ships to relocate the Soral before terraforming crews arrived. Each rescue was expensive. Each one strained human resources. But each one also proved something important. The species everyone else had written off could thrive when given a chance. Something unexpected began happening. Smaller species in the Galactic Council, those who had always stayed quiet during debates, started speaking up. They questioned policies they had never dared challenge before. If humanity, a relatively young and weak species, could stand up to the Council's established order, maybe they could too. A representative from a species called the Dorath, fish-like beings with minimal influence, gave a speech during a council session that shocked everyone. For 3,000 years, my people have accepted our place. We are not warriors. We are not traders. We control no vital resources. By the Council's measure, we are useless. But humanity has shown us that this measure is wrong. Every species has value. Every life matters. I stand with humanity's position that we must protect all peoples, not just the powerful. It was a small rebellion, just words. But words had power. High Commander Threx watched these developments with growing concern. He called a private meeting with other major powers in the Council. The massive Valtrine commander addressed the gathering with barely controlled anger. The humans are disrupting the natural order. They save the weak. They protect the useless. And now the weak and useless think they deserve equal voices in galactic affairs. This cannot continue. Vexos, representing the Kethrin Combine, nodded in agreement. The humans cost us the Marathi mining rights. They interfered with legally purchased claims. They're building some kind of coalition of rejects and refugees. What's their endgame? Power, Threx declared. They appear compassionate, but they're building an empire. Today they gather the worthless species. Tomorrow they'll have enough allies to challenge us. We must act before they grow stronger. What do you propose? Asked a representative from another major power. We remind humanity of their place. We show them what happens when young species challenge the established order. We must crush this movement before it spreads. Not everyone agreed. Some council members, even powerful ones, saw the humans differently. They recognized genuine compassion when they saw it, and they worried about starting a war over humanitarian aid. But Threx's faction was influential, and they began preparing quietly for confrontation. On New Haven, Lorem walked through gardens where Ilari and human children played together. He had learned much about humans in the months since the evacuation. He learned that they were often contradictory, capable of great kindness and terrible cruelty. He learned that they argued among themselves constantly about the right path forward. He learned that they made mistakes, that they struggled, that they were far from perfect. But he also learned that when humans made a promise, they kept it. When they said they would not abandon someone, they meant it. That reliability, that stubborn refusal to give up on others, was worth more than all the technology and resources the Council's major powers possessed. Elder Lurum, said a young human named Sora, who had become friends with several Ilari families, "Why do your people glow?" Lurum's light shifted to warm colors as he smiled. "We glow to share our feelings. Humans use words. We use light. Different methods, same purpose, to understand each other." "I wish I could glow," Sora said. "It's prettier than words." "Words are beautiful too," Lurum replied. "Especially when they're true. Your people told us we would be safe. Those words were beautiful because they were real." Across the galaxy, more species whispered about humanity, some with hope, some with fear, some with confusion, but everyone was watching now. The question was no longer whether humanity would continue helping others. The question was what would happen when the Council's powerful members decided to stop them. Ambassador Soman felt the tension building. She received warnings from allies that Threx was rallying support for action against humanity. She sent messages to Earth Command, to all human colonies, preparing them for what might come. In a quiet moment, she spoke with Governor Taeyang about her fears. "We might have pushed too hard," she said. "We challenged the Council's entire philosophy. They won't forgive that." Taeyang looked out at the Alari settlements visible from his office window. "If helping others is wrong, then I'd rather be wrong and kind than right and cruel. Whatever comes, we don't regret saving them. Even if it means war?" Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, at least we'll know we fought for something that mattered." The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when compassion met power, when idealism confronted pragmatism, when humanity's promise to protect the overlooked was truly tested. The war everyone feared seemed inevitable now. High Commander Threx returned to Valtrine space and began assembling the largest military fleet seen in generations. 50 capital ships, hundreds of support vessels, thousands of fighters. The message was clear. Humanity's defiance would be punished, and punished thoroughly. Other council powers watched nervously. Some quietly supported Threx's preparations, believing that the human problem needed to be resolved. Others worried about the precedent of attacking a species for humanitarian actions. The council itself was fracturing along lines that had not existed before. On Earth, military commanders prepared for what they knew would be a losing fight. General Yunji coordinated defensive plans with Admiral Deho. They studied the projections over and over, hoping to find some strategy that would let them survive. "We cannot win a direct confrontation," Yunji said bluntly during a strategy meeting. "The Valtrine fleet alone outnumbers us 5-1. If they're supported by other council forces, we won't last a week. Then we make every day count," Deho replied. "We defend New Haven and the other refuge worlds. We protect the people we promise to protect, even if it means humanity's extinction." The room went quiet. It was the question no one wanted to ask, but everyone was thinking. Had their compassion doomed their entire species? Governor Taeyang spoke from New Haven via video link. "I've spoken with the Alari, the Marathi, and the others we've helped. They've offered to evacuate, to scatter across the galaxy if it would save humanity from war. They don't want us to die for them." "What did you tell them?" asked Ambassador Soman. "I told them we don't abandon our people. They're part of humanity now, not by birth but by choice. We stand together or not at all." Lurim, the Alari elder, appeared alongside Taeyang on the video screen. His light pulsed with determination. "Humanity saved us when we had nothing to offer. Now we have something to offer, ourselves. We may be small, we may be weak, but we will fight beside you. All of us will." It was a beautiful sentiment, but everyone knew it would not be enough. The species humanity had saved were not warriors. They had few weapons, limited ships, no military tradition. Their offer was brave, but ultimately futile against the Valtrine war machine. Ambassador Soman returned to the council chambers one final time before the war began. She requested an emergency session, though she knew it was probably pointless. The council gathered, and Soman stood in her small station looking up at the tiers of power that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. "I know many of you have made your decision," she began. "You see our protection of endangered species as a threat to your power. You see our compassion as weakness to be exploited. But I want you to consider what we've actually done." She activated a holographic display showing New Haven and the other refuge worlds. The Alari were dying on a forgotten moon. Now they contribute environmental science that has improved farming across human space. The Marathi were losing their homes. Now they teach us mining techniques we never imagined. The Yeni were watching their oceans die. Now they share aquaculture methods that feed millions. Every species you called useless has proven valuable when given a chance. We didn't help them because they were useful. But they've shown that your measure of value was wrong. Every species has something to contribute if we let them live, grow, and thrive. Imagine what this galaxy could be if we protected each other instead of exploiting each other." High Commander Threx stood in his elevated position. "Beautiful words, Ambassador. But words do not change reality. The strong survive. The weak perish. That is nature's law, and you cannot rewrite it with sentiment." "Maybe not," Soman replied. "But we can choose to be better than nature's cruelest laws. We can choose to be civilized. Isn't that what the Galactic Council is supposed to represent? Civilization?" The session ended without resolution. Threx's fleet continued its advance toward human space. War seemed inevitable. Then something unexpected happened. The smaller species in the council, those who had been quietly watching humanity's actions, began to move. It started with the Dorath announcing they would not support military action against humanity. Then the Sorrel declared the same. Then a dozen more species, individually weak but collectively significant. More importantly, several major powers began reconsidering their positions. They had watched the Marathi crisis carefully. They saw how close the galaxy had come to war over mining rights. They recognized that Threx's aggressive stance might destabilize the entire council structure. Vexos, speaking for the Kethrin Combine, made a public statement that shocked many. The Combine has reviewed recent events. We believe that human actions, while unconventional, do not constitute a threat to council security. We withdraw our support for military action and propose instead a review of protection policies for all species. It was not an endorsement of humanity's methods, but it was an acknowledgement that perhaps the old ways needed reconsideration. One by one, council members withdrew their support for Threx's war. Some did it for moral reasons, believing that attacking humanitarians was wrong. Others did it for practical reasons, calculating that humanity's growing coalition of grateful species might become valuable trading partners. Still others simply wanted to avoid a destructive war that could damage galactic commerce. High Commander Threx found himself increasingly isolated. His fleet was still the largest, but without political support from the Council, any war he started would be seen as aggression rather than enforcement. He would be the villain, not the enforcer of order. In a final confrontation at the Council chambers, Threx faced reality. "You are all fools," he declared. "You let sentiment corrupt policy. You reward weakness. This will destroy you all eventually." An elder council member, one who had remained neutral throughout the crisis, finally spoke. "Perhaps, Commander, but perhaps there is more than one kind of strength. Humanity has shown us something we forgot, that civilization is measured not just by power but by compassion. They are not perfect. They make mistakes, but they try to be better. That is worth something." A ceasefire was negotiated. More than that, a new council charter was drafted guaranteeing basic protections for all sentient species, regardless of their economic or military value. It was not everything humanity wanted, but it was a start. The Galactic Council did not dissolve, but it fundamentally changed. New voices were heard. New policies were considered. The hierarchy still existed, but it was no longer absolute. Humanity did not dominate the new order. They shared it with species both great and small, working together to build something better than what had existed before. 5 years passed. Captain Deho, now Fleet Admiral and approaching retirement, walked through the gardens of New Haven. Ilari and human children played together, their laughter mixing with the soft chiming sounds the Ilari made when happy. 36 species had built communities on this world, each contributing their unique cultures to a shared society. He found Lurum sitting near a crystal garden, the old elder still alive and still glowing with gentle light. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the children play. "We have a saying now among my people," Lurum said eventually. "When faced with impossible choices, act as humans do. It means choosing compassion even when it seems foolish." Deho smiled. "We're not that special. We just remembered what it's like to need help. That makes you very special indeed. Most species forget. Most species grow strong and then grow cruel. Humanity grew strong and chose to stay kind. That is rare." On Earth, Ambassador Soman prepared for another council session. She was now the first chair of what they called the Reformed Council, working to implement the new charter. It was exhausting work, filled with setbacks and compromises. Old prejudices did not disappear overnight, but change was happening. Slowly, imperfectly, but real. Hyunwoo continued building ships, now designing vessels specifically for rescue operations. His latest design could evacuate 10,000 beings in a single trip, with life support systems adaptable to dozens of different biologies. Jiwon led a multicultural research team, studying how different species could share knowledge and technology. Her latest paper on cross-cultural scientific exchange had been downloaded millions of times across the galaxy. Governor Taeyang received another distress signal, this time from a species called the Vren, who lived in the depths of a gas giant. Their world was being disrupted by energy harvesting operations. They were dying and had nowhere to go. Taeyang did not hesitate. He began organizing a response immediately. But this time he was not alone. 5 other species volunteered ships and resources to help. The Alari offered to house refugees temporarily. The Marathi provided engineering expertise. Even some council powers, learning from humanity's example, sent modest support. The rescue operation succeeded within months. The Vren were saved, relocated to a moon with similar atmospheric conditions. They brought knowledge of gas giant ecosystems that opened new avenues of research and exploration. High Commander Threx, forced into retirement after his failed war preparations, watched these developments from his homeworld. He never admitted he was wrong, but he stopped actively opposing humanity's efforts. Perhaps he was too tired. Perhaps he simply recognized that the galaxy had changed, and he was a relic of an older, crueler time.